Hi, folks. We're Tassless today. Tassless today, your pushback channel. Thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about some surveys and studies which allegedly produced the outcome that 45% plus of young men, say, mid 18 to 25, I think was one I looked at, have never in their adult lifetime at least, has never asked out a girl on a date. Now, it's difficult to imagine that a guy, assuming he's straight, a guy can reach the age of 25 and he's never asked out a girl on a date. That seems inconceivable, but there you go. Now, there are other studies and surveys and polls and so on that come up with even over 50%, and even by age 30, there's a very sizable body of people who haven't, and probably more men than women, I think, that haven't engaged in intimate relations with a woman, and this too seems sort of staggering to me. Now, the times are different, certainly, and again, this is within my life, and I'm not a million years old. When I left school, for example, or even in senior high school, girls were getting married straight out of high school, and sexually active people were sort of all around really at school. So people were asking out, for dates, and the schools would sort of facilitate this. Or certainly when I was there, that they would have these things. I think they called them like school socials or something like that, and it was so the kids would go. They'd have a band or a DJ or something, and kids would get together. And the idea was that they would, you would ask somebody, would you come with me to the dance or the school social? So the dating game, the asking people out, at least the dating game was already going on there. And one of them, I think it was in like year 11, there was a girl, could have been year 12 of high school, like the final year. I think a girl asked me out, which took me by surprise. But anyway, there would have been not many people who weren't asking out, who hadn't asked someone out on a date. A guy hadn't asked a girl out a date, even by sort of 16 or 17, 18. Now, only a very small number of people went to college or university in those days. The cutoff was pretty strict. The flooding of the universities with arts courses was just beginning, so it was in its early days there, or at least in Australia it was. There's a lot of sociology going on in the United States, but so a lot of people were getting married much younger. Again, girls getting married straight out. Not all girls, but many were getting married straight out of high school, or certainly shortly thereafter. And I remember girls at school who I'd bump into them again sort of a couple of years later, and there they were married with a young child in pushing it around in a stroller, and or guys that I'd known at school, and there they were with their wives and a baby in tow, and I wasn't married at that point, and I used to think how terribly grown up they were, or they looked, and I'm not sure I looked at it with envy necessarily, but it's they're so grown up. I wish when you're like 20 years old, you kind of think that way. But the issue of guys not asking out girls, I think there are two things here. One is the hysterical feminism that all men are rapists, oppressor, Nazi, fascists, or straight white ones, and that going to college is now almost a universal thing. You're looking at 50-60% in some countries where in the West, where low IQ kids who would have been the first people to get married and have children, they're now going to college and spending what would have been their early marriage and childbearing years. They're spending it studying sociology and getting radicalized on how to hate white people and hate white society and so on. So those critical years that people would grow up, because having to pay bills, having to be responsible for other people, it makes you grow up. It makes you accept responsibility and take, not in every single case, but for the majority, take responsibility seriously. I don't think it was a responsibility. I took the responsibility with utmost seriousness of providing for dependent wife and children, and would suffer outrageous indignities in the workplace, and suffer the most difficult asshole bosses imaginable. They weren't all that bad, but would tolerate things that I otherwise wouldn't, because I had that responsibility. So it makes you grow up and perceive responsibility, but you've now got whole generations of young men who not only don't have to think about that responsibility, but have never had it, but where it's not really on their radar. So the idea of looking for a marriage partner, or considering marriage partners, and considering what responsibilities you'll take on, and how much of them and when, that's not really there to anywhere near the same extent that it was. And of course, people are getting married later. Also, for women, there's a much greater opportunity for careers, or imagined. I don't think there really is in reality, because the purchasing power of the paycheck's fallen so much. But there's a possibility of working for your life, for the rest of your life, at shit jobs and shit money, but where you don't have to bother about procreation, or having getting married, or having to take on responsibilities that you can avoid. So really, the idea of responsibility avoidance has been facilitated by the new era of, well, why should I get married? I don't need no man, and going to university and so on. This also has delayed the responsibility type thing for men. The idea was for men. I remember the social studies teachers when I was at say first year and second year high school. You were all told, boys were told that you're going to grow up to be a man, and you have to provide for your family. Your wife will be at home looking after the children. You have to make sure you bring home the bacon. It's your responsibility. You have to do it. You must take that responsibility. She will rely on you, as will the children. That sort of thing was very much how it was done back then. So, and again, this is not that long ago. So these sort of talks don't exist anymore. The sort of talks that the first year kids are getting there. Well, all you white boys, you're all rapists, oppressor, Nazis. White society is evil and bad, and slavery and colonialism, all evil, all bad. Climate change is going to end the world tomorrow. Now, in that sort of environment, you wouldn't necessarily be thinking too far ahead, and you'd be thinking, well, why should I bring a kid into the world when there's all all these Nazis are everywhere, all these fascist oppressors are everywhere, running everything. Hitler is everywhere. And so I can't do this. So why would I bring a kid into the world? And then climate change is going to end the world tomorrow or the next day. So, gee, well, I don't think I should make any long-term plans in my life here. So there are those sorts of different attitudes. In terms of asking, you're asking girls out on a date. Now, in high school and through university, guys are constantly being beat over the head of, you're a rapist oppressor. You are a fucking fascist Nazi. Those helpless oppressed women, and you're the oppressor. You're a fucking Nazi. And so under those sort of circumstances where women are openly encouraged, and if he upsets you, you tell us, and we'll ruin him. We will ruin him. He'll be kicked out of university. He'll be dragged in front of some kangaroo court. We've been thrown in prison because he breathed oxygen in your presence. Those damn fucking Nazis. So you'd be sort of treading on eggshells there. Ooh, I don't think I'll do. So now I guess it's not an experience, going. I've never had other than young guy like 15 or something. I've never really had a problem going up to girls and asking them out. Your women, as I got older, of asking them out. It didn't sort of, if I saw someone who I thought, well, gee, she looks nice, then I would, assuming the circumstances allowed it. I mean, she might be in the middle of a group of people talking, but generally I didn't have a problem with that. So I would, and I did okay. I got some, why don't you get lost, you pervert. I got that as well. I mean, you'll always find the crazies that look nice, but they're crazy. Sometimes, you ask her, or I have anyway, asked a girl out, and you kind of have your preliminary skirmishing, the cup of coffee and so on. And I think, ooh, no, okay, you might be a hot piece of ass, but fucking hell, you're a nutcase, so I don't want anything to do with you. So then you can back out of that. But I haven't really had a problem with it. And also, girls have come on to me as well. I guess for the most part, I've had for the most part, I've dated sort of quite, tall and athletic girls for the most part. And again, they're the ones that, have often come on to me. So it would be a bit difficult for a 6 foot tall, 190 pound, athletic chick to go and say, that guy tried to rape me and he forced me. So, that kind of would be a rough one. Whereas, the 5 foot tall, 105 pound, 110 pound chick goes in and says, he raped me, and she cries and holds up the torn blouse or something, then that's something that would get a run. And I've noticed in businesses where they're trying to fit a guy up with inappropriate behavior to women, they always pick the little tiny 4 foot 11 inch tall, skinny little waif, and try and get the guy to do something to her. That is always a thing. Similarly, as I've traveled around on business, you go to the third world countries, and their reflexive action when a guy from the West comes along is to try and push prostitutes on him, hookers on him. That is their reflex. That is their first go-to. Is it to talk business or to talk, let's be professional here and let's make sure that we've got all the I's and dotted and the T's crossed. No. Hooker. That's always their it's always their first go-to every fucking time. And so they always like to send over these little tiny waifs. So that's always so you run a risk if the tiny little girl comes up to you and makes eyes at you. That's dangerous, because if she says you tried to rape her, everyone will believe it. But you can see why a lot of guys, particularly the more timid ones, and particularly the ones who've sort of been subject to feminist mothers berating them for their wickedness and so on, then they probably just look at, gee, if I ask her out, I could the next step might be a prison cell. They would sort of make that pretty close connection. Now there's other factors at play as well. Certainly when I left school, and going through college and everything, that most, not all, but many of the jobs that men could get, even jobs in the factory, they would be enough money to live a simple life, but enough money to buy a basic 3-bedroom, smallest 3-bedroom house, 1 bathroom, a basic sort of Ford or General Motors type, basic entry level car. You could have a driving holiday once a year. You could live that sort of life. You could get by. You could do all right. You wouldn't be rich, but you could do okay. And that sort of life's gone now. So, and the amount of people, certainly in Australia, that can live that sort of life today, it's not even 10% of the working population. So even people on 2 incomes of the average income, husband and wife working on 2, their purchasing power is less than a single income was in the 1970s. So that again illustrates the changing economic circumstances. So there's just less, men are less attractive partners now. Nearly every man who had a full-time job in the 1960s and 70s made enough money to support a dependent wife and children. Now the proportion of men that can do that is very small. Or has shrunk very considerably, and many women, through affirmative action, have incomes equal to his. So men on a relative basis are much less attractive partners. So given that women want to marry up, and so okay, I'll get married, but the guy needs to be making a shitload of fucking money, otherwise he's kind of not worth. I already make as much money as most of the guys around me. So unless a guy comes in from left field who makes a fuckload of money, then he's kind of not really worth marrying. Now, the other side of it too comes in from the man who looks at it, and I know a lot of men in this category now. He said, well, why should I run the risk of getting married when I'm going to bring most of the wealth and most of the money and value to the economic value to the relationship, because she can leave me at any time for any reason or for no reason, and she will be generously rewarded with the money and the assets and the value that I have worked for and she has not worked for. So why would I want to enter into a contract like that when the probability is, 50% probability that I'm going to get wiped out? Now that's a very, very genuine sort of concern there. So men who are making sort of money, and I know this, men say, well, they're not prepared to have a relationship unless the woman is like comes from a wealthy family, or she's making as much money as he does, and those are, and the higher the income, of course, the fewer the amount of women that are making that money, and so there's a whole lot of things that militate against the, if you like, the incentive. So there's the social responsibility of, most people were leaving school at 16, say, and maybe doing like apprenticeships or those sorts of things, and they would by the time they're 18, 19, they were kind of looking 20, they were looking at getting married. Girls leaving senior high school be married within a year or two, leaving school, will be procreating in that time. These sorts of circumstances. So the social conditions that would, if you like, be an impetus or an incentive for people, guys to ask girls out. And as soon as you go and ask someone out, you sort of are kind of taking a level of responsibility anyway, in that sense. Not simply will she say yes or no or something like that, but the responsibility. So, well, I'm going to ask you out, and so I'm accepting responsibility. This is from the guy's point of view for or a disproportionate amount of responsibility for the success of the relationship. So if it doesn't work out, it's kind of my fault. That was hitherto the situation with the guys. That incentive is pretty much all gone. It simply doesn't exist anymore. Then the radicalization through college, a lot of girls told, well, they're all fascist, Nazi, rapists, and that would militate against, not that there aren't the drunken sort of college kid type parties, there are, and they still happen. But the view that the colleges take is they're protecting women as a oppressed class against those evil oppressor rapist men. That's hardly a helpful position to take in college, and gives, both men would sort of shrink back from asking girls out, and girls have the view that you look sideways at me, buddy, and I'm nailing you as a sexual harasser. So there's those sorts of things as well. So again, you get a small number of guys who say are well paid or got well paid jobs, or come from well-to-do families. They're good-looking guys or something like that. But there's only a very small number of them. What are you looking at? 1 in 100 or something like that. Then you're looking at a situation where there's a very small number of guys that are in those categories, and they can pick and choose who they want, and they can refuse the advances of women unless the women sort of shapes up as being socially acceptable in their class of people, or hot piece of ass, whatever the case may be. Now, also you get the realism. There was a lady that I knew, and she was quite a successful basketballer, I think it was, and it did okay actually. It was, and she was also quite good looking, but she's like 6'3" and weighs 200 pounds, that sort of stuff. We kind of dated for a little bit, but she had this thing where at 6'3" she would only date a guy who was taller than her. And on top of that, she wanted to wear heels because it made her legs look better and so on. So the guy had to be like fucking 6'6". But she fancied herself as, I don't want to date morons, and I don't want to date other male basketballers, for example. So she had to find the 6'6" tall non-athlete who was also a genius, and so on and so forth, who had a good job. And so I was trying to explain to her back in the day, do you realize that you're talking maybe 1 in every 100,000 men is going to meet your criteria, maybe not even that many. So why do this to yourself? Why make it so hard that you can't get a date, and you can't even get laid? Why do that? So, but she was quite particular about this. But as time went on, by the time she hits 25, 26, then it's okay. All right, then. Well, look, I'll accept a guy as my height, and I won't wear heels anymore. And then another couple of years, okay, as long as the guy's over 6 foot, I don't care. This. So eventually, she had to change her views and attitudes. So coming back to the survey of people between 18 and 25, people's attitudes will change as they get older, and the practical reality of the world around them sinks in, and not the ideological insanity of the radicalization they've got in high school and college. But making men young men so afraid that they won't ask a lady out for dinner or to I don't know, go watch a movie or something like that, then that's insane. But again, the circumstances in the society we have now are radically different from they were 20, 30, 40 years ago, when young men were routinely asking girls out on dates. And we need to understand that and accept that difference, that is very much not the only cause, but very much part of it. Being with Tassless today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.